Good evening, race fans, and welcome to HBR20 by Herd Racing League. Tonight, we will have a single lap of mighty Metropolitan around the New York circuit. I'm joined in the com box tonight by Jake Winter-Sanderson and Ed Finney. Our lady on the course tonight will be Maureen Finney, and we'll also be following Kevin Frudd, Greg Williams, and Lisa Jones. Tonight's course is 20.2 kilometers around mighty Metropolitan. We will turn left out the Pens and head straight up to the northeast corner of the course, at which point we'll hit the High Line. Then we will take the High Line to the KOM at 8.5 kilometers and start climbing anti-clockwise. We'll reach the KOM at 10.3. Then descend, hang on to the High Line all the way over the lake to the northwest side of the course, at which point we will descend and then finish at 20.2 kilometers with a grand total of 317 meters of climbing. We are 10 seconds away from the start, and I'll hand you over to Jake for the starting gun.
Race fans, thanks James. So we're kicking off now, 1 and 0. Here we go. Let's see what happens. I'll be following tonight my good friend and fellow sweep on the Herd Gallops ride, Canadian and all-round nice guy, Kevin Frudd. We spent quite a lot of time with him at the front last week, where he did an amazing performance to finish third with a breathtaking 3.9 watts per kilo for the whole ride. So looking forward to good things here. He's in second place already, got off to a great start. We've got a little bit of a group. Just behind us is Greg Williams and Maureen Finney. So I'll pass you over to Ed.
All right, so Greg Williams, he's a fairly solid B-Cat rider. Looks like he's trying to come up and jump on this lead group to catch that draft. And Greg knows that he's got to really push it on the start, get in that lead group, and just hang on to have the best position at the end.
I'm following Lisa Jones tonight, and she's already settled into a nice group holding up between about 2.5 and 3.0 watts per kilo. Lisa, on her best day, is a 2.6 20-minute rider, and she freely admits that she loves to climb. And she's settling off into the first 3K, which will be nice and flat as we go round the lake before we hang a right up onto the first bit of climbing up to the High Line, which will then take us up to the KOM. So it's a nice, easy first 3K, but the 7.5 after that are not particularly pleasant, and I cannot wait to race this tomorrow afternoon. Jake, will you be joining us?
It's entirely possible. We'll see how hungover I am in the morning. That's the best I can give you, James. We'll see. But for now, it's looking good at the front here. We've got other heavyweights, Max Szymanski, Greg Williams and Maureen all within touching distance here. Putting out big watts from Kevin. I'd like to see him potentially not quite do all the work on the front and try and recover a little bit of energy. Last week, he I think he suffered at the end because he was the one putting out the big watts at the beginning, sort of pulling that group along. So hopefully he can find a few people to work with. And Greg's looking great, as is Max. So looking forward to an interesting race. I think it's flown by the first 2 minutes. I'm already 1.3k in. Greg, Ed, how's things looking with Greg for you?
Greg's doing great. He's in the draft, pulling 3.233, so that's right in his wheelhouse. It looks like Kevin's up front doing all the heavy work. We're just getting into a little bit of a downhill, so they should all stick together. This would be the time that maybe some people might be able to catch up to this group. Looks like we've got one more, so there's a fifth in that lead group, and currently Greg is taking the pole.
Just going back to Greg mentioning, sorry, not Greg, Jake mentioning Max Szymanski. Max is known fairly well to us from Herd group rides, and if you're ever up early-ish in the UK on a Monday morning and want to take part in the M2C2 ride, Max is normally there showing off his sprinting talent. Surprisingly, on Swift Power, his best 15 seconds is only 8.43, but I'm 100% certain that he is capable of more than that and may well exceed that tonight. But going back to Lisa, she's found herself a nice group of about 6 riders, hanging in steady, bouncing around between 2.0 and, well, between 2 and 3 watts per kilo, just going over 2 kilometers after the first 3 minutes, and we are starting to head towards our first little climb of the evening. So not too long to go for Lisa's pride and joy. She loves to climb. Jake.
So we've got our group here of about 5. We've got a little bit of a gap now opened up to Maureen's group, but it'd be very interesting to see how Max reacts to the climbs. I've seen him perform very, very well on the flats, especially places like Fuego and Tempest Fugit, TikTok, those sorts of courses. I've not seen too much of him climbing, whereas we know that Kevin, he's at home on the slopes. You know, I've seen him get 4.3 watts per kilo on the Alp for an hour. He's not afraid of those sorts of climbs. So Greg's the pure sprinter we saw last week. He was happy to sit on and sort of like take the second place at the last minute. I'd be very interested to see. I think that was Greg. It was one of the two Williams, so apologies if not. But I'd be very interested to see the sort of clash of styles here. We've just hit the KOM. Actually, sorry, it's not the KOM. It's the first rise at about 3.3k. But some big watts here. We're seeing Kevin attack. He's going off the front doing 10.5 watts per kilo, 700 watts here. He's gapped everybody. He's made 20 meters on everybody. So we've hit his 8%. Perfect timing. Max is the closest to a 30-meter gap now. Still 8.1 watts per kilo for Kevin there. Huge attack. Gapped everybody. 50-meter gap now as we managed to get closer to the top of that little rise. So 4%. Kevin's trying to make it a bit more exciting. I get the impression he told me last week that he was disappointed he didn't put an attack earlier, that he sort of was a bit too tired when it came to the final lap. So I think he's trying to rectify that now. And we've got Greg's group just behind. So Ed, how's Greg reacting?
Well, Greg reacted to that really well. He's trying to hang on to Max. We've got Parker Norman there with him. Greg's outdoing himself, hanging with this group. We've dropped Joe Hurst back a bit, so he was in the group, but he's back 14 seconds now. Just not able to hold that 4+ watt per kilogram up this hill. As you said, Kevin Fruit is running 5.0 right now. Max is pushing 5.2. Parker and Greg are 4.5 to 5. They're really pushing hard up this hill, trying to make that gap. So on the downhill, they just take off like nothing's no tomorrow.
Let's take our first trip to the lady on the course. Maureen, how are you doing? How's that hill?
Oh, it's fun.
Maureen obviously having a great time already, as everyone does at the HBR series. Lisa's also well on our way up the hill. We're at 3.6 kilometers hill, holding steady at a good 4%. And she's lost. Well, the group's definitely spreading out a bit. Maureen, how are you with people? Are you grouping, or are you on your own?
I'm about 2 seconds ahead of Joe Hurst.
Yeah, it looks like Maureen's pulling pretty good on Joe. She's got 4 seconds on him. So she's using her weight to her advantage here. Little history, Maureen and Joe kind of go back. They battle it out race after race. So we'll see how this turns.
Good to hear. Lisa's just started to pull back towards John Richardson. I think it's Alex Cobrin in front, and Ole from who we followed last week is another 5 seconds up the road. So there's plenty of familiar faces around, and I think this one will develop as it carries on. Over to you, Jake.
So Kevin's hit the descent now. We've leveled out on the bottom of that climb, and he has a gap of about 15 seconds over the chase group, led by Max Szymanski, who's the one putting down the hammer, trying to close that gap. Max looks like he's actually made a little gap himself of potentially 1 to 2 seconds there ahead of his group. Maybe he's sat up a little bit there and he's rejoined them. It looks like Greg's a second or two behind that group. So we've got some splits here. At the very least, Kevin's explosive attack is making this exciting and an open race, as opposed to the last week's sort of bunched peloton 5 people ride that we saw for the most part of the 25 minutes. So very interesting to see if Kevin can sustain this. He's got a 22-second gap here, and that group, I'm not sure that Greg's going to work too hard with Max. I think it's down to Max to try and close that gap, but I also think if Kevin's able to hold these sorts of watts, those guys are going to have a really tough job trying to close that gap. So we'll see how he reacts so far. It looks to me like he's attacking on every climb, sort of trying to recover as best he can on the downhill, and then holding sort of sustained 4 watts per kilo on the flat. So it looked like it was quite a maverick attack, but actually was at the perfect time, the perfect place at the beginning of that climb. Nobody was expecting it. It's early on, and now he's got a gap of 20 seconds. So very, very interesting to see how this plays out. But there's plenty of time yet. We've not hit the KOM. We're at 5.7 km. So I think we've got another 2.5 kilometers until we hit that KOM. Then we'll soon see what the lay of the land is after that. So James, back over to you.
Yeah, so we've got the KOM, the very start of the KOM, about 8.5 kilometres. Lisa's just gone past 4.5, so she's got another 4 to go. She made good progress on the hill. She's had the little dip, and we're back to a little bit of a climb again. Just coming up to the lake now, which we'll cross before we start to get closer to that lovely KOM and the anti-clockwise climb to the top before we descend again, and then hang on to the high line. And then back to the lower lands before we finish, but that's a long way away yet. So Lisa's still managed to hang on to John Richardson, who's a second in front, and Alex Cobrin, who's 5 seconds in front. Ole has managed to extend his lead over this group to about 20-odd seconds. As ever with Zwift, when you have rolling terrains that are up and down, it's often a bit difficult to keep track of the time gaps, but I think Ole's got about a 20-second lead at the moment, and he's hanging on to about 3 watts a kilo. So maybe he's gone too hard too early. We'll find out after the climb. Over to you, Ed.
Yeah, so the group of 3 here, yeah, Max Szymanski, Parker Norman, and Greg Williams. They're pushing really hard, holding together, but it looks like Greg is fading a bit. He just came off about 3 seconds. He's pushing almost 5 watts a kilogram to get back on the group. Doing a good job hanging in the draft, but this is a big push for Greg. He's doing a great job hanging in there, and I'm hoping he's not burning one of his matches here on this particular part of the climb, trying to catch these 2 guys. He's trying to make up 2 seconds. He's not down to 1. Looks like he's going to come up on him, and hopefully he can get in on a draft and catch a little break.
Maureen, it looks like a slightly better time to come to you now. How's it going out there?
Yeah, that's a bit better. Jay Freund has caught up with me. He's on a TT bike, so I don't feel a bit bad about drafting him so that's helped as I head up towards the KOM.
Good luck, doing well. Jake, how's things going at the front?
So the gap's now currently at 15 seconds. It's remained steady. Kevin's been consistently putting out heavy watts and trying to get his rest where he can. It's still Max Szymanski that's laying down the watts at the front of his chase group. Just sort of following on from what Ed was saying, I think that's going to have been... Greg looks to have caught back on now, but how costly will that have been for a sprinter? He's got a great sprint we saw last week. He's able to really turn it on at the last minute. So that will impact his sprint. The question is, how much is it going to be too costly, or has he got time to recover with the KOM about a kilometre away? Maybe not. We'll soon see. We're at 8 kilometres now, so as I say, the gap remains steady, and Kevin's just going to be approaching the foot of this climb imminently, so we'll soon see if Greg will be in that group that's chasing when we hit the descent. But it's about a 17-second gap now, and everybody looks like they've eased up a little bit in that chase group, with the exception of Kevin off the front. So it looks like he's holding it for now. It remains to be seen if he can do that with the KOM coming up. If he can, I'll be very, very impressed, because everybody is scrambling to catch him behind. Over to you, James.
So Lisa's just gone over the 6 kilometre mark. She's a little bit in no man's land at the moment. The rider behind her is about 35-40 seconds behind, and in front they've stretched the lead out to about 20 seconds to John Richardson. Lisa's holding on to about 2 watts a kilo at the moment, but we all know that she loves the climb, and in just over 2 kilometres time she'll start to hit the KOM, and I know she'll hope to make up some time in places as she hits there. Just without calling on her again, because I know she's probably puffing a bit, Maureen is hanging on to 6th place in a field of 33, so looking like a great performance so far. Lisa's happy in the midfield in 16th, and as Jake's been telling us, Kevin's leading the way with Greg currently sat in 4th. So got a nice spread of the races that we're following tonight. And Lisa's just going by 6.5 kilometers now with 2 to go until we start to hit the big climb. Over to you, Ed.
Yeah, Greg's fallen off the back a little bit here. He's about a second off behind Max and Parker. They're both pushing 4.5 to 5.5 watts a kilo. Greg's at 4 right now. If you check out Zwift Power, Greg's forte is as a time trialist, as Jake was saying, but he also is a strong long climber. So I'm hoping that he can keep up the effort and not fall too far back. He's 4 or 5 seconds, so that's going to be tough. We're already on the KOM. Just took the right turn and starting up the first incline here. So Greg might be on his own here if he can't make up this little bit of a gap, and it looks like it might be tough. We just hit the KOM batter.
It's a fairly nasty climb with some lovely spikes above sort of 10-15%. Lisa's now about 1.5 kilometers away, just coming up to 7 kilometers. She's now climbed just over 100 meters. We are approaching 15 minutes into a race. I think we'll probably see the faster finishes, maybe 35. I'd say about 35 minutes, possibly 40. But Lisa's holding steady in the middle. The gap in front is 30 seconds and the gap behind is 45. So 16th place looks pretty comfortable at the moment. And she is now 1.2 kilometers away from the start of the climb. How's it going up front, Jake?
So it's starting to get interesting. The gap has closed to 5 seconds. However, a few moments ago it was only 3 seconds. So Kevin's opened up a little bit more of a gap. It's cat and mouse at the minute. Max is on the front, as always, kind of drilling that group. They seem to be keeping together, but Greg has dropped off the back now. He's about 15 seconds behind them. Apologies to Greg. I got him and the other Williams from last week confused. I thought he was the sprinter, but no, Greg's, as Ed said, a very solid time trialist. So potentially he can dig in here and make a little bit of time back. But Max is proving himself to be a fly in the ointment of Kevin. He won't let it go. He's kept a very, very steady +4 watts per kilo the whole time, just ticking over, keep on rolling up this hill despite the gradient. So Kevin's trying to shake them. Max won't let go. He's got help in the shape of Parker Norman. So how long can Kevin hold on? The gap is now only 3 seconds again, as we flatten out towards the top of this KOM. So I think most likely they'll come together on the descent, and we're going to see some games in a 3-man bunch towards the end of this, as we approach the sort of halfway mark of the overall and towards the top of the climb. So I'll hand back over to Ed to give us an update on how Greg's doing.
Yeah, Greg looks like he's about halfway through this race. He's holding a solid 3 to 3.5. I think he's settling in on a pace. He's just dropped off a 10% grade, coming down to 3 or 4. Might get a little bit of rest here, but he is 20 seconds off the lead group of 3, which is Kevin, Max, and Parker. But very solid in front of Maureen Finney, 41 seconds out. She's 41 seconds out. So he's a lone rider right now, just hanging in there. I think he's hoping to make it over the top of the KOM and maybe make up some time on the guys, but it's going to be tough coming off the back of that group.
Maureen, I can see your heart rate's approaching 180. Are you dying?
Yeah.
Maureen's well on the way up the KOM at the moment. She's now picked up a place into 5th, and the arch nemesis Joe Hurst is 2 positions behind now. She'll be hoping to bring up a nice gap on the way up the hill and try and hang on to it for the second half, which is definitely a lot more downhill and flat than the first. And Lisa's now on the KOM, just hitting 13-14% patches. And she is now closing on John Richardson. The gap is now apparently only 12, 13 seconds. So doing a great job. She's up to 15th. She's caught and overtaken an M Steed from Canada, and making good progress, pushing hard.
We've got some drama at the front where towards the top of that climb, as Kevin approached the top, Parker Norman managed to distance Max Szymanski, who looked like he cracked. He looked like he was doing 2 watts per kilo sort of just before the top of that climb, and managed to cause a gap between him and Parker, which is now 11 seconds. Kevin's 8 seconds ahead of Parker. So great news for Kevin. That mini group split up. They're not going to be working together anymore to chase him down on this descent. Max, I'm sure, will have something to say yet that he's not done. And apologies if he's not cracked, but it looked suspiciously like he'd run out of steam towards the top there with the wattages sort of dwindling. But he's a solid guy on the flat. This is where it'll become interesting. Like we said before, it's a clash of styles, and Kevin's had his KOM where he shined there. The gap's only 5 seconds to Parker Norman. Max's gap's only 11 seconds as they hit the flat, and Max is doing the same watts as he was before. So that little recovery looks like it's done wonders for Max, and there's plenty more road left before this is all said and done. We'll soon find out who is top dog in the next 8 kilometers as we hit a little incline now. The gap is only 4 seconds to Parker Norman. He could well be the dark horse here. He's remained steady, and he's happy to close down those gaps. Seems like a very tactical rider, very astute. So 2 seconds now, the gap between him and Kevin. I think they're about to come together. Max only 9 seconds behind, doing 5 watts per kilo, trying to catch on. You get the sense now that the fireworks are about to come. These guys are not playing around. They're doing big numbers, big watts, and Kevin's still somehow putting out these huge numbers, despite the fact that he's been attacking now for about 15 minutes, it seems. So Parker Norman just joins him, overtakes him. Kevin's on the wheel, but a slight gap opening up. It looks like, there we go, Kevin's just closed it again. So Max is about 10 seconds off the back. He's going to have a battle now to try and close that before these two draft together and sort of pull away from him. That's going to be devastating if he can't close that as quickly as possible. It could be too much for anybody to ask to close these guys who are doing 4.5 watts per kilo and working together, a gap of 10 seconds. So I can't quite see what's going on behind that. So let's speak to Ed and find out how Greg's doing on the presumably on the descent now.
Yeah, Greg is still heading up the hill, still pushing the low 3.2, 3.4, just being just rock steady up this thing. He's a good minute 10 behind Max and a minute 20 behind Kevin and Parker. He is got a herd rider, looks like coming up pretty fast. Page out of Australia is at 43 seconds back. Freund at about a 120 and Maureen Finney at 134. So he's probably in a solid position where he's at, fourth coming in here. He'd be hard pressed to catch that lead group of 3, and I'm going to have to believe that it's going to be tough for the people behind him to catch him, to overtake him, to take his 4th position away.
It's like D Page is going the other direction up on the hill, not coming down. So I don't have.
Okay, that was an odd one on the screen here, where that guy came in. He just suddenly appeared, but anyway, it looks like Maureen got close to over 2 minutes on Joe Hirsch, so she's sitting fairly well on this climb.
Yeah, D Page is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots behind Lisa. Lisa's just coming round the final bend on the KOM before she reaches the banner, hanging on to 15th place. The gap to John Richardson in front is now only 5 seconds. And behind her, an M Shiba out of Japan is pushing hard to try and catch her. There's only a 5-second gap there, but she can now see John Richardson in front of her. Certainly on the map, he's not far away at all. Once she reaches the crest of this climb, she should hopefully be able to see him, and that will give her some motivation to, motivation to try and catch on. Yes, there he is. Just on the final crest now, as we go around the last bend before the banner. So she's certainly got him in her sights, and hopefully can continue to push on and get back past him. How's that very exciting battle at the front, Jake?
Agony for Max. Max managed to put in a Herculean effort to close that gap to maybe 4, maybe even 3 seconds. Huge numbers for him to do that. At which point, Parker Norman put in an attack off the front and has distanced Max now. So the gap there is 15 seconds back to Max. He's still putting out great numbers, but he put in a huge effort to close that gap to 3 seconds. And as soon as he did that, Parker sort of sensed the danger and attacked off the front. Kevin obviously forced to follow, managed to close the gap, which was opened up to a second. That'll be the first time in nearly, over now 20 minutes that Kevin hasn't been at the front of this race. Is the first time there that Parker's just sort of slipped ahead of him. So it's not all over yet. Max is now only 7 seconds behind. So he is plugging away. He's definitely not out of this. We hit 15 kilometers, 250 meters of elevation. So the climbing's mainly done. We've only got 5 kilometers left. This comes down now basically to a time trial. Who's gonna go first? Who's going to be able to get to the finish line first? But as I say that, we've had an attack. Parker keeps attacking and he's tried it again. He's managed to gap Kevin now with a gap of 2-3 seconds, doing 5.5 watts per kilo on the descent here. It's very tough to do that on a descent of 5%. We've got Kevin doing his best there to try and put out the best numbers he can to hold on, but very difficult with the resistance on a trainer to do that. So 9 seconds now, the gap. Parker's timed that perfectly. One gets the impression that he knew exactly what he was doing then. He was waiting for that moment, and this could be all over now. He's got a gap of about 15 seconds. So huge numbers from Parker, and Kevin doing his best to respond, but he's put in a huge effort over the course of this race with crazy numbers that were not possibly sustainable, and I think he's done it to try and give us some excitement. So you can't fault that. He's if he takes silver, that would be absolutely fantastic effort. Max is 20 seconds behind him, so he's definitely got the advantage there as we hit 16k. So 4k to go. The kilometers are just sort of melting away at the pace these guys are going. So I'll hand you back over to Ed to get an idea of what's going on before we hit the final kilometer or two at the front.
Sure. Greg is coming down the hill now. He's pretty much on the flat up on the overhead skyline. He's about a minute and a half behind the lead group of 3, just holding about 3 watts a kilogram, which puts him, for those of us in the U.S., 26 to 30 miles an hour. So just hanging solid, just trying to maintain his position. Doesn't look like anyone is making up a lot of time on him. And as Jake said, the kilometers are melting off. So really what Greg's got to do is just stay solid on here. Don't bonk. Keep that 3 to 3.5 and just finish this race out in 4th position.
Meanwhile, Lisa is now on the wheel of John Richardson. She's obviously putting a great effort up the hill to catch up a sizable lead, and now sitting on the wheel, she's managed to hang on the descent, and we're now at 12.1 kilometers. We've only got about, we have 8 kilometers left and about just over 105 meters of climbing to go. So she'll be glad she's done the most part of the climbing. And we are just coming up towards a half an hour with, I think, probably about 10-15 minutes to go. Probably about 10 minutes for the leaders, if even that. But just as I've been talking, John started to pull away. But just to mention another name, Ole Kabalecki, from one of the races we followed last week, is holding a great position of 13th, about just over a minute and a half in front of Lisa, who's still hanging with John. I suspect this will be a to and fro battle, possibly until the end. But we'll just go back to the front of a race with Jake.
So we're seeing, I just saw a very, very fun little battle between Max and Kevin. So the gap there, only 12 seconds now. The numbers shot up to 5 watts per kilo. Max said okay, let's do this. And Kevin said, I'm game, let's go. And the two of them sort of sensed that the other was attacking and both put out those huge numbers, keep the gap at exactly what it was, 11 seconds. So very interesting little duel there between those two guys. Kevin looks like he's 20 seconds or so behind the leader now. So Parker's done a great job to sort of hold him off, despite the fact that Kevin's been doing massive numbers. As soon as we hit any sort of incline, he's doing 5 watts per kilo. So fantastic effort from him, fantastic effort from Max. Parker's done the perfect race, really. He's only done the work when he absolutely had to. He's not worked with anybody. He's been very tactically astute, as I said earlier. So really exciting race, and great to see three of the herd guys, at the front of the race, representing us so well. So especially considering I know that Kevin did a massive effort on the team time trial yesterday, and when I spoke to him earlier before the race, he told me his legs were hanging on by a thread and had been sellotaped on, essentially. So to do this is fantastic. We're into the final 2K now, so hang in there, Kevin. You're nearly there, buddy, and you can have some rest afterwards. Max is coming. He's just behind. It's about 15 seconds, but I think Kevin's going to hold on to it as we hit the last 1.5K. So I'll hand back over to Ed.
Yeah, so Greg is still hanging about a minute and a half behind Max, staying steady at 3 to 3.5. His average for the race right now is 3.3 watts per kilogram, so that's very close to his FTP. Just a point of note, he does have the highest average power for the race at 295 watts. But to go along with that, he also has the highest heart rate for the race at 174. So Greg is really pushing it hard. He's been by himself pretty much the whole time with nobody to draft off of. So he's just out there plugging along. I'm going to finish this thing out in really good position. He is solid. I don't think he has anything to worry about. He just needs to ride this thing in.
Just head quickly to our lady on the course. Maureen, how are you doing? You managed to hold the gap to Joe?
Yeah, he's catching though. He's gaining. He's just under a minute behind me, and doing my best to keep the gap, but I'm getting tired.
Well, you've only got 3K to go, so hang on in there.
I'm
Lisa,
counting it down.
good job. Lisa, meanwhile, she's lost John Richardson a bit on the flatter parts of the course, and M. Sheba has just overtaken her. So she's back into 15th spot. John Richardson has a lead of 7 seconds, and she's now just hanging onto the wheel of Sheba, and we cannot be far away at all now from the flat section. We're just going over the lake, and then I think it's fairly shortly after that we'll descend back onto the flat roads before we come round to the finish. Jake, you are very, very near the end. Let's reel it out from you, please.
Speaking of finish, we have Parker just crossed the line as Kevin makes his way up. So Parker about 25 seconds ahead. Kevin just reaching the top of that Astoria line finish there. My favourite finish in the whole of Zwift. Fantastic effort there. He maintains that gap over Max of about 14 seconds, even though Max was pushing like a steam train. He never let up and is still now doing 5 watts per kilo, chasing down Kevin. So really, really great stuff to see from both those two guys at the front. Kudos to Parker for playing that perfectly, playing the hand that he had perfectly. And this week, Kevin, you moved up to second. You were third last week, so 2 podiums in a row is unbelievable. Fantastic that we get to watch that, and makes the races very exciting to commentate. So thanks for your exploits, Kevin. I know you'll be listening afterwards, so appreciate your explosive fireworks as always, and great stuff. So I'll hand back over to Ed as I'm guessing Greg will be very near the finish now.
Right. Greg's got about 0.7 kilometers to go, so he's heading on a slight downhill now. He is over a minute ahead of the next contender. So as I mentioned before, he's solid. He's running about 3.2 watts a kilogram, which is right around his sweet spot. He's pushing hard. We'll have to see at the end here if he decides to do the full-on sprint at the end or just roll through. I guess it's going to depend on how much he's got left. He was pushing hard with that group at the beginning, and not sure how much he's got in the tank to finish this thing out. So looks like he's coming around the corner. I can see the sprint, the finish line coming up, and 3-4. Not sure if he's going to try and push anything hard or if he's just going to wheel through the banner or not. He's about 3.8, 3.9. He's picking up a little bit 4. He's pushing a little bit just to see, but I think he's just going to roll it and finish off strong in 4th, and Greg is done. Excellent race for Greg.
Well done, Greg and Kevin. And Maureen, I think you only have, about half a kilometre to go?
Yeah, about 0.4 miles for us Americans here.
Very good. How's your lead to Joe? Have you got it in the bag?
Yeah, I picked up another 30 seconds on him, so that's a bit better.
Good job. Well done. That's a very hard-earned 6th place for you. Super job. Meanwhile, Lisa's she's lost a bit of ground to M. Sheba and John Richardson. She will be very glad to see the end of this blue road, which I think is just down this straight and a little bit around the corner. So not too far to go. Just to have a quick look and see how Ole's doing. Ole's at 17 kilometers. He has been averaging. He's been averaging 2.5. So Ole just went into the seas last weekend. He's certainly holding on to that end of the bargain, holding 2.5 this week. We're just going to watch. Well, I'm just going to watch Maureen just going through the banner right now to hang on to 6th place. Great job for Maureen. And excuse me, Joe's about 500 meters behind her, with other names in the herd. Dennis Wade currently sat in 9th on Swift Power at 18.2 kilometers. Ole's at 17.3, and excuse me, bad throat. And Lisa's currently at about 16. Ed, are you following anyone else on the course at all?
Yeah, I've clicked into Ola. He's pushing pretty good. He's hanging in there. I think he's solid in front of M. Sheba by a minute 50. So he's got no competition there. He's 40 seconds behind H. Kin. Not really looking like he's trying to make up a whole lot of time here. I'm sure a lot of these guys after the KOM, everyone's just trying to finish this thing out, and I think a lot of them blew their legs on that hill. So not a very friendly race from our race director.
Got to keep everyone on their toes. Lisa's now onto the flatter section, despite the fact it's still about 5% at the moment. She is at 60.6k. 270 meters climbed, so only over 47 to go. In terms of distance left, she has a 3.6k, and she's now in 16th place. A Belgian rider has just overtaken her, but it looks like this is probably where she's going to hang on to the end of the race. M. Steed behind is about 20 seconds back. Ole, meanwhile, is at 18.2 kilometers, hanging on to 12th place in the race. His nearest competition is H. Kin from Japan, a minute in front, and M. Sheba is 2.5 minutes behind. So I think I can be fairly confident in saying that Ole looks fairly odds on to hang on to 12th place as well. And Lisa's still just making steady progress as we edge towards the finish, just going over 17 kilometers. She can see the Belgian rider in front of her, not really he's not pulling away, so there's hope that she can pull him back. M Steed, meanwhile, is still about 25 seconds behind, and the rider behind that is another 30 seconds back. M Maestro, the Belgian rider in front, is now only 4 seconds away. Is anyone else watching anything on the course?
Ola's still holding strong in his position, as you said. He has made up a little bit of time on Hkin, who's 42 seconds ahead of him, and still solid, almost 3 minutes ahead of M Shiba. Ola's picked it up a little bit here. He's coming down to the wire. Shouldn't be too far for Ola, maybe just slightly less than 1 kilometer, and he'll finish this thing out.
Lisa's gap is now 3 seconds. We're at now 17.3k, so less than 3 to go. We're on probably one of the only pan flat sections of road in New York, just bobbing between 0 and 1% gradient, and she's just about to start a nice little descent. We're just approaching 40 minutes, so with 3 kilometers to go, I'd say we're probably going to finish around about 44 minutes. Not much climbing left to go. Ole coming into the very, very last stages. 40-second gap in front, which is definitely coming down. But Hkin still seems to be pushing out big numbers. But Ole with 500 meters to go. Just about to start the final short climb up to the banner, which we will turn to very shortly, and we'll he'll be able to see it any second now.
Yep, there it is. Ola's starting to head up the hill. He's pushing 3.3 watts a kilogram, 3.4, 3.6. Let's see if he's up 3.9, 4.9. He's making a push for the finish. He's doing what he can, even though he knows he's got a solid 12th place here. He's still trying to improve his time. He's over 5 watts a kilogram. Really pushing hard to get through this finish line. Excellent finish by Ola.
Well done, Ole. And Lisa's just over the 18k mark, 2.2 kilometers to go. Nice little descent of 8-9% at the moment as we come back down towards the lake yet again. Gaps. The Belgian rider in front has pulled it out to about 10 seconds, and she is hanging on to a lead over M Steed of 30 seconds now. 80.3 km, 1.9 to go. 296 meters climbed, only another 20 meters up to go, and we only have 1.8k to go. Gap in front is hanging steady at 10-11 seconds. The free riders in front are still on the course, entering into their last kilometer. Lisa looks fairly settled, and I think she's likely to hang on to this position. 1.5 to go. We are not far away from one of the last intersections. She'll finish go. Got the lake on the left. She'll continue heading down there until we reach the intersection and turn left onto the slightly cobbled part of this course, which we'll see very shortly. And after that, she'll have about 500 meters before we turn left again and then head up towards the banner. So 19 kilometers now, 1.2 to go. The last probably 2-3 minutes of this race for us. And she's still hanging on 16th place out of 33. So definitely in the midfield, and a great job for her. She definitely had a good time climbing up the hill, making up lots of time on other riders. 1 kilometer to go.
Yeah, currently looks like Lisa is this holding position. Not really making any time up on the Belgium rider in front of her, 13 seconds out. Still pushing a good 1.7 at 2.0. So trying to get my camera to work a little bit here.
Lisa's just onto the cobble part I was mentioning just now before the final left-hand turn towards the banner. So we're just coming up to that last intersection, and Here we go, just past the orange Swift sign and turning left now. A little dip before the final climb. So 600 meters to go. And we can just about see the pen in our mini map, and we can see that orange banner as well. So Lisa's just taken the KOM jersey as well, as the last remaining quickest lady climber on the course. So 400 meters left, 305 meters climbed. She'll be able to see the banner any second. There it is.
Coming around the curve. There she goes.
Go on, Lisa. Nearly there. And M Steed has come out of absolutely nowhere with a closed down a 30-second gap in the last couple of kilometers to fly up the hill past her. But Lisa's pushing as hard as she can. 2.5 watts per kilo. Last 200 meters. Come on, Lisa, you're nearly there. Pushing 180 watts. Clearly working hard. Heart rate around about 170. And here we go. Last few meters. Well done, Lisa. Great job.
Fantastic effort, Lisa. Well done.
Thank you very much to anyone who's joined us this evening. Thank you very much to my co-commentary team of Jake Sanderson and Ed Finney, and also thank you to Maureen Finney for putting up with us whilst she was on the course. Just to mention, there are another 4 HBR races still to come. There are 2 tomorrow, one at 12, one at 8 UK time, followed by another late one on Sunday morning at 2 o'clock, and then the final one at 2:30 on Sunday afternoon. Then we have the individual time trial on Mondays, points race on Wednesdays, and then the team time trial on Thursdays before back to the weekend yet again. So thank you all very much for joining us, and from the Herd Racing League commentary team, it's good night.